Hi there, interghost here, and today I'm just doing a video about the movies that I've seen in the last month, the month of September 2017. Recently I got a unlimited card for the cinema, so I can go along and watch any movies I want. So that's really given me the buzz to watch movies. It's really good to watch the new movies coming out. Also, I've been watching a lot on Netflix and also a couple on DVD. And I've been sharing my thoughts on these movies on a website called Letterboxd. And if you want to follow me on there and see my reviews and that sort of thing, that'd be really cool. So in September I watched 23 movies, which is quite amazing when you go back over them and see how many I actually watched. People were saying to me, how do you have so much time to watch all these movies? But I don't really watch TV, so and I'm not really that active on YouTube anymore, so I'm not sitting there every night watching hours of videos on YouTube, and like I said, I'm not watching hours of TV, so watching a hour and a half, 2 hour movie each night isn't really that much of a big deal. So the first movies I'm going to talk about are the ones I've seen at the cinema in the last month. The first one I saw was Logan Lucky. Now this is a comedy movie made by the people who did Ocean's 11. It's more of the same thing really. It's quite good humour, good acting. Daniel Craig does a really good job in the movie. It's about some sort of hillbillies who do a heist and get some money, and things all go wrong for them. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. The only thing I would say is the guy who plays his brother will always be Kylo Ren to me. Second film is the Limehouse Golem, which is a sort of crime detective type thing set in Victorian London, where these people are getting killed, sort of Jack the Ripper style, and it's like a murder mystery. You don't know who's done it until the end. Although the only sort of criticism I would say is that I worked out who'd done it in the first sort of 10-15 minutes, and I said to my mate Paul, 10 minutes into the film, I bet it was this person, but that would be too obvious, and it turned out to be that person. But apart from that, it was a pretty good film. Loved the setting. The actress, what was her name? Olivia Cook, who is in Bates Motel, if you've ever seen that. She was the main person in the film, and she did a really good job. I'll give it an average score of 2.5 stars. Next movie was The Hitman's Bodyguard. Now, I really wanted to like this film. It had a couple of really good actors in it. It had Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds, who plays Deadpool. They were both in it. They did a really good job. The only thing I would say is it was let down a bit by, they tried to throw in too many jokes with just Samuel L. Jackson just using the MF word all the time, which after a couple of times you just think, really, is that all you've got? You just shouting MF at the screen every so often to get a cheap laugh. But apart from that, the action scenes are really good. There was a really funny bit with somebody not wearing a seatbelt. An average film, so 2.5 stars. Next was one of my favourite movies of the year. I went and saw It, which was a reimagining of a Stephen King story. There was a TV movie or mini-series brought out in the, was it late 80s, early 90s? Famous, with Tim Curry. This was sort of like the remake, using a big movie budget, and they did a really good job. Coming of age story, some teenage lads who discover that there's people going missing in the town that they live in, and it's this clown which can turn into things which you're scared of. The kids were really good. There's one lad in particular who does a really good job of doing some like really funny one-liners, and yeah, it's great. I'd really recommend you go and see it. Hopefully they explain in part 2 more of where Pennywise the clown came from, because it doesn't really go into that too much. So yeah, it got my highest score for September, and that is 4.5 stars. Really good film. Next I went to see American Made, which is a Tom Cruise film. Again, quite an average movie. Had a few funny bits in it about Tom Cruise plays a guy, I think it's based on a true story, who starts smuggling drugs from America, but then he also gets recruited by the CIA, and so he's sort of playing them off each other. It's quite easy to watch, but I'd probably say that this is really a DVD movie, so not really one worth watching at cinema. Again, another average score of 2.5. Now the next film I went to see was Mother, and if you've seen this you'll probably agree with what I'm about to say. If not, I probably wouldn't recommend watching this movie. The advert for the film made it look really interesting. I thought it was going to be a really good horror film, but unfortunately it wasn't. It was just a crazy film, really. I think the director was just trying to be far too clever and trying to throw in too many sort of hidden messages and that sort of thing, and it was meant to sort of represent religion and the way the world's being destroyed and that sort of thing. You just come out of the movie thinking, what the hell was that all about? You sort of have a rough idea of what you think it's probably about, but then you have to go online or look at somebody else's review just to confirm that that is actually what the movie's about. Now, if a film is that sort of clever that you have to look up to make sure that you sort of grasp the idea of the movie, I don't think that is a very clever movie. Jennifer Lawrence was in it. She was really good, very good acting. I mean, the actual look and feel of the movie was very well filmed. It looked really good. It was just the story sort of sucked, and when we walked out of the movie everyone was sort of looking at each other as if like, what the hell did we just watch? So because of that, I'd probably give it a 2 out of 5 stars, just for the actual look and the acting. Next movie I went to see was Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Now, I've not seen the first one, and I went into this sort of not knowing what it was all about. Pretty quickly picked up that it is sort of a James Bond sort of spoofy type comedy film. Very over the top, lots of action in it. Far too much CGI in there for my liking. It's just all a little bit too crazy, I thought. A few of my friends really enjoyed it. Paul, who I went with, he enjoyed it. He said it was better than the first one, I think. I said it was sort of like Thunderbirds meets Team America and World Police. It was sort of like these people trying to save the world, but then chucking in loads of, like, you know, crazy humour. A little bit better than average. Too much Elton John. If you've seen the film, you probably know what I mean. I'll probably give it 2.5 or maybe 3 out of 5. Next movie I saw was American Assassin. Wasn't going to see this, but I was quite surprised that it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's about a guy whose girlfriend gets killed by terrorists, and then he devotes the rest of his life to training himself and going out and trying to hunt these terrorists down and kill them. It's got Michael Keaton in it. He was really good. Nice to see him in another movie. And he sort of trains him up to... He gets employed by the government and he has to go and track these people down and kill them. The only bad thing about the movie was whenever there was a fight scene, it looked like it was a really good fight scene, but the camera was all over the place and it was all too hectic. You couldn't really see what they were doing. But apart from that, yeah, really good film. Probably give it 3 out of 5. So that was all the cinema films I saw. I'll try and speed it up a bit. Next ones are films I've seen on Netflix. So I saw 13 movies on Netflix over the last month. First one I saw was It Follows, recommendation from my brother Ross. It is a horror movie. It's sort of feels like an 80s or 90s type horror movie. It's very, very slow at the start, so if you are going to watch it, give it a chance. It gets a lot better. I think it's really good because it works, because it doesn't really show too much of the monster or whatever it is. Basically, it's just, if you sleep with somebody, you catch this sort of like disease, which means that this thing comes and hunts you down and kills you unless you sleep with somebody else. Sounds quite crazy, but it does work. but this thing can look like anything really, so, but it will just slowly walk towards you, and if it catches you, it'll kill you. Really good film. Yeah, one I want to watch again. I'd give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next one I saw was Death Note. Now, I'm not going to say much about this. All I say, it's sort of like Goosebumps for adults, but not as good. It's about this monster. This guy finds a book, and if you write a name in the book, this monster will kill them. Absolutely rubbish. I wouldn't watch it. 1 star. Next I watched Blair Witch, the remake? No, the sequel. 2016 Blair Witch anyway. What I liked about the movie is they actually completely forgot about Blair Witch 2, which was a really bad movie, and it sort of joins on where the first Blair Witch film ended. It started off really good, using sort of, you know, handheld cameras and that sort of thing. The actors were very scripted. They didn't really go down the same route as the other one. They tried to make it look real, but you know, it looked really scripted. And by the end of the movie, it just turned into a Hollywood horror film where there's lots of effects and that sort of thing. Not a bad film. It felt to me more like a remake than a sequel. I would give it about 3 out of 5. Keeping with this sort of remakes or sequels, Evil Dead from 2013 is sort of a reimagining of the original. Obviously it didn't beat the original. It was a good film though, good Hollywood horror film. It's sort of, if you've seen the first Evil Dead, it's the same thing but with a much bigger budget, and they used better effects. Lost the humour really, because Evil Dead's sort of like a black comedy type horror. This one sort of made it more serious, and obviously it didn't have Ash in it, which is a shame because he sort of makes the Evil Dead movies. But apart from that, pretty good. 3 out of 5. Next one was another horror, because obviously it's almost Halloween, so I've been watching a lot of horror films. This one's called Mama. Never heard of this one, but I saw the trailer on Netflix, so I watched it, and it's really good. Basically, 2 children get taken off into the woods by their dad. The dad gets killed. They get brought up in the woods, and years later they're found by their uncle, who takes them back, and they're sort of like, well, they brought themselves up as like wild children, but also they bring back this ghost with them, because they're living in this cabin and it's haunted by this ghost called Mama, and it comes back with them and starts killing people. The ending was crap, but up until the ending it's a really good movie. I'd give it 3 out of 5. Next is another film which was recommended by my brother Ross, called Coherence. Felt a little bit like a drawn out long Twilight Zone episode, all about alternate realities, and all the power goes out because the comet's coming over, and they see a house down the road with a light on, and then they go down to the house and they come back, and they're freaking out because they see a family which looks exactly like their family, and it turns out it's the same people but in another reality. They sort of overcomplicated it a bit. There's far too much dialogue in it. There's a guy in it, I don't know what his name is, but he's got a beard, one of the main characters. He was very annoying, his acting. Very good idea, just sort of a bit too explained, and you know. So I'd give it 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5. Next film I saw was Circle, which had a really interesting story to it. I like these sort of movies where it's all based in one room. There's no sort of special, well, there's a few special effects, but it doesn't rely on special effects. And it's all about these people stood in a circle. They don't know how they've got there, and they've got a time limit counting down, and at the end of the time limit somebody gets killed. So they all discuss with each other why they should survive and who should die next. And it's just sort of like a really interesting idea of how you would try and convince other people that your life is worth more than theirs. The ending is pretty good, well, where it should have ended, and then it sort of goes a little bit rubbish after that. But yeah, I couldn't really think of a better way to end the movie, but sort of the whole sort of thing where they're talking to each other is a really good idea, and it's sort of like a Black Mirror type idea. 3 out of 5. So when I looked up the Circle, there was another film called The Circle, and it's got Emma Watson and Tom Hanks. Yeah, Tom Hanks in it. So I thought, oh, it must be good. It's got Tom Hanks in it. So I watched it. Another sort of Black Mirror type movie. it's about social media and how it could take over everybody's life and how you rely on people liking you online and that sort of thing. But it was very very drawn out and long, and again far too much talking and explaining, and this is the reason we're sort of doing this movie. They sort of had to explain everything, and it's probably the only Tom Hanks film I wouldn't recommend for people to see, so I'd probably only give it like 2 out of 5. It's okay, but nothing special. Next movie was House at the End of the Street. I was looking up a horror movie, was it Last House on the Left or something like that, you know, Wes Craven movie, and this one came up, and I've never heard of it, and it had Jennifer Lawrence in it again, which, like I said, from Mother, she's a really good actress, and I thought, oh, it's a horror movie with her in, so I'll give it a go. Also had Max Derriot, is it? Another Bates Motel actor, so I thought, yeah, I'd give it a look. The story, again, starts off quite slow. Not really much happens until sort of like the second half of the movie. And then it's sort of like a typical, there's a girl trying to kill people, and then there's a twist at the end, which you sort of could see coming. So it's just like a basic horror film. It felt a bit sort of like, I think it was actually set in Japan. But it felt very sort of like a Japanese horror movie. I'd give it 2 out of 5. It's not that bad, but it's sort of just a bit below average. Next movie I saw was the Ouija Experiment. Now I watched this because it sort of looked sort of like a Blair Witchy type thing, all done on handheld cameras, and yeah, it worked pretty well. The acting was a bit wooden. The story and the idea was quite a good idea. Started off well when they're around the Ouija board, and things are moving in the background and that sort of thing. But then it sort of went a bit crap at the end. They showed far too much of the ghost, and the acting went bad. And then they did all these sort of like flashback scenes of where the ghosts come from and who they were, and that sort of ruined the movie for me. Up until that point I sort of would have given it sort of a 3 out of 5, but in the end I'd give it 2 out of 5 because the ending was just a bit pants. After watching that film I saw that there was the Ouija Experiment Part 2, so I thought I'll give that a go because you could see how they could continue the story on, and this film was awful. It used some of the people from the first movie in the second one. They sort of laid it out as if like the actors from the first movie were the actors from the first movie, and yeah, they were the actors from the first movie, and now they were at the premiere of the movie, but this thing from the Ouija board starts coming after them, and oh, it's absolutely rubbish. Don't bother watching it. I think I got 3/4 of the way through it, or halfway through it, and turned it off. I'd give it half a star. Next movie was The Bad Batch. One I've never heard of again, but I saw a really good trailer for it, and I thought I'll give it a go. Loved the setting, loved the ideas. It's sort of very sort of Mad Maxy type feeling. It's a girl gets dropped off in the desert at the beginning by some sort of law enforcement agency, and then it turns out that there's all these people, I'm guessing they're criminals, are living out in this desert, and they just have to, they're like a law to themselves, and they just have to sort out between them what happens. And they're sort of like cannibals, and there's like a guy who's set up some sort of religion, and yeah, really good idea. Very slow beginning, and the ending was a little bit underwhelming, but apart from that, because of the acting and the setting and the basic idea of the movie, it's worth a watch. I gave it 3 out of 5. And the last one on Netflix was another horror film called The Forest. Now, this is the one which was set in Japan. Sorry, I got a bit confused with House at the End of the Street. This one was set in Japan, and the only reason I watched this film is because it had Natalie Dormer in it, the lady from Tudors and Game of Thrones. And it's not a bad horror. It's sort of like a typical Japanese-y type horror movie where her sister goes missing in the woods and she goes to try and find them. And lots of jump scares. Again, another twist in the story at the end. Typical twist, really. Nothing exciting, but pretty average, so another 2.5 out of 5. And finally, I watched a couple of DVDs this last month, and the first one I watched was Big with Tom Hanks, a classic comedy children's movie. Watched it with my son Jack because he'd never seen it before. It's about a little boy who he wishes on a machine at the fairground that he was big, and he wakes up in the morning and he's an adult, and then he goes and works for a toy company, and it's really good seeing the old 80s arcade machines and the 80s toys which were around at the time. Yeah, it's still funny and worth watching today. Jack really enjoyed it, and I'd definitely give it a 4 out of 5. And finally, I watched Young Frankenstein with both my boys, Jack and Leo. They'd not seen it before, and there's a lot of it about it on the news at the moment because they're doing a stage show. So I put the DVD on and we watched it, and we all enjoyed it. Quite funny. Gene Wilder, really good actor. The bit with Frankenstein doing putting on the Ritz always makes me laugh. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching. Sorry it's a bit long. I did watch a lot of movies this month, and I thought I'd just share what I'd watched with you. If you like this video, let me know. Give it a thumbs up. Leave some comments below and I'll make another one next month, hopefully. Thanks for watching, and I hope you go and see some of those movies. Cheers.